dare you? How dare you? How dare you?
Even the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, if you go to their section of Group 1, which is the science, they don't support any of these claims. And I assure you, having served on it, it's biased, but you couldn't get any real scientists to agree some of the nonsense that's being promoted.
There's no such thing as settled science, especially climate.
Over the last 50 million years, temperatures steadily declined, plunging the Earth into what geologists call the late Cenozoic Ice Age. We are still in that ice age.
The reason there's all that ice on the poles is because we're in an ice age. Everybody knows that who knows anything about the history of the Earth. This is an ice age. We're at the tail end of a 50 million year cooling period, and they're saying it's too hot.
But of the mild warming that has taken place in the last 300 to 400 years, can any of it be attributed to human emissions of CO2?
What we have here is a ginkgo tree, and it's actually a living fossil in the sense that this type of tree first appeared about 270 million years ago. On the underside of the leaf, there are what we call stomata, the cells where they can uptake CO2. So they're actually measuring how much CO2 is in the air, and then they adjust the number of these stomata to how much CO2 there is. And by looking at fossils and measuring how many there are at a different time, it says something about what was the level of CO2 back in time.
So when we look back in time, what do we find? Over almost all of the last 500 million years, the level of CO2 in the atmosphere has been far, far higher than it is now. Even with modern industry's contribution to CO2 levels, by geological standards, the level of atmospheric CO2 today is close to being as low as it has ever been.
At present, we have about 400 parts per million. 50 million years ago, it might have been 2,000 parts per million.
I think current estimates of global CO2 is 423 or so parts per million today. If we look through the Phanerozoic, the last 550 million years, we would see CO2 on the order of 7,000 parts per million.
CO2 is plant food, and the result of much higher levels of atmospheric CO2 in the past was a much, much greener world.
Periods of elevated CO2 tend to be time periods of a huge biodiversity on the planet. In fact, we're in a CO2 famine if we look over the last 550 million years.
At the depths of the most recent glacial maximum, the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere sank so low, all life on Earth came close to extinction.
They say CO2 is higher than it's been for 100,000 years, but what they don't tell you in that period they're talking about is that CO2 sank so low that all life on Earth nearly died.
20,000 years ago, CO2 is at the lowest level it has ever been in the history of the Earth, 180 parts per million. If it had gone down another 30 parts per million, we'd all be dead.
There is a low point of CO2 where photosynthesis becomes so inefficient that plant life would die. Then everything else starts to perish after that.
During the last glacial maximum, there's good evidence that in many parts of the world there was plant starvation from not enough CO2. So we should be very grateful that CO2 levels are beginning to go back up. We're still far from the historical norms, which would be several thousand parts per million. There's not enough fossil fuel to get there, but at least we're making a start.
CO2 makes up a tiny fraction of the gases in the atmosphere, just 0.04%. It is just one of 25 different greenhouse gases, which, taken as a whole, form only one part of Earth's complex climate system. So what evidence is there that this trace gas is having any noticeable impact on the climate?
There is no truth to the idea that the Earth is warmer now than it has been in the past. It's a lie. There is no truth that CO2 is higher than it should be. That is a lie.
Earth's climate has changed many times over the course of its long history and will continue to change without any help from us.
Climate always changes, you know. Who denies climate change? It's always changing.
There's no such thing as a climate emergency happening on this planet now. There's no evidence of one.
Yeah, the extreme weather event story is just absurd. There's no basis to it at all. It's just based on propaganda. The actual data shows the opposite.
I've shown you the official data, the official science. Tell me what I'm denying.
The climate alarm is nonsense. You know, it's a hoax. I've never liked hoax. I think scam is a better word, but I'm willing to live with hoax.
But why are we told, again and again, that man-made climate chaos is an undisputed scientific fact, beyond question, beyond doubt? To answer this, we must examine the so-called consensus on climate change.
Thank you very much.
Until the 1980s, global warming was little more than an eccentric scare story put about by radical environmentalists. But then the cause was picked up by an ambitious young senator, Al Gore, who would soon become vice president. $1 billion a year of public money was made available for research into climate change. This quickly rose to $2 billion.
Up to that level.
Academic researchers in various disciplines began to apply for this climate funding.
If you want to qualify for money that's labeled climate, well, you take whatever you're doing and you add a little bit of climate speak to it, and away you go.
So all I have to do is add a little wrinkle to my grant application to explain how, well, I'm worried that climate change will mean the death of all the maple trees. And so right away you qualify for funding.
Academics of every kind lined up for climate funding. Climate became an exciting new area of interest for sociologists, biologists, professors of English literature, lecturers in gender studies, and many more.
And it also served to create a community. I mean, you know, you've become a climate scientist now, even though you know nothing about the physics of climate.
Thousands of papers were published on climate change and prostitution, climate change and beer, climate change and the Black Death, climate change and disability, climate change and video games, and everything else imaginable.
There's an almost comical list of studies out there. Just do a Google search on climate change and everything comes up.
Few of these papers ever questioned whether climate change was actually true.
After you've done the research and you write the paper up, sometimes you find there's no effect at all from climate, but you still have to say in your papers, oh yes, climate change is real, and we just need to study this some more.
If Congress is willing to pay you to find evidence of global warming, by golly, as a scientist, we're going to go find evidence of it, because that's what we're being paid to do. And guess what? If you don't find evidence, or say the evidence suggests it's not a problem, your funding ends. This totally corrupts the way we look at the science.
How dare you! How dare you!